We're Adam and Jocelyn Naus, and this is our God story of how God called us to become foster and adoptive parents. And we both really like talking, so we wrote it down to keep it short as possible.
So this is the short version, but it does eliminate most of the emotional roller coaster of the crisis and trauma and uncertainty. Um, but we've never prayed so much in our lives as we have through this process. Our faith has been stretched, and we're so much better for it. There's no way to include all of the prayers and miracles along the way, but here it is.
In August of 2010, we got married and had talked about adopting before trying to have biological kids.
I had said I wanted to have 6 kids.
And I said I wanted to have 5 kids because I didn't ever want to have to drive one of those big, ugly vans.
In fall of 2011, I helped my sister rescue a pregnant dog and ended up wanting to have one of the puppies. We were in a one-bedroom apartment at the time, so we started house hunting. We ended up buying a house that was next door to a foster adoptive family. The first time I met them, I said a phrase that we actually hear a lot, which is, "We've thought of adopting." But our neighbor didn't let me off the hook. And she said, "Well, when are you going to do it?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, what's keeping you?" And I said, "I don't know." So with our new house, we now had the space, and I told Adam about my encounter with a new neighbor and asked, "When are we going to do it?"
We decided to start the process in the new year. So in February of 2012, we called the Children's Aid Society, also known as CAS, and had our initial meeting. Then through the summer, we completed our parenting courses, reference, financial, medical, and police checks, as well as the home study. In December of 2012, we were approved and opened as a foster adoptive home.
We met our matching worker on December 15th, who was so discouraging. She told us that we were too young, that no worker would ever place a child with us. And we felt really, really crushed and confused about what God's plan could be in all of this. On January 8th of 2013, I had a women's ministry meeting at the church. And Gwen Penny asked how the adoption process was going, and I told her how discouraged we were. She asked to pray for the worker by name.
The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, we got a call asking if we were interested in a baby boy who had just been born and was at the hospital. They said it was high risk as they didn't know how the case would go. We headed there that morning and met our son Judah.
That night when I got home from the hospital, I had an email from Gwen where she shared her daily devotional, which was talking about God's timing. I was crying as I responded that we had met our son that day.
We spent that year loving our sweet boy and eventually beginning the adoption process.
On Christmas Eve of 2013, we got a call for a baby that was due any day. A sweet baby girl joined us on January 2nd of 2014. We were told she would only be with us for a few weeks, but things in foster care usually go differently than planned.
In March of 2014, we adopted Judah, still had the baby girl, and we found out that we were pregnant.
The next few months were incredibly challenging, caring for an extremely difficult toddler, an infant that had many visits and appointments with CAS, and facing all the complications of a high-risk pregnancy. But in October of 2014, our son Kessel was born.
And 3 weeks later, our sweet baby girl, who had been with us for almost a year, went back to a very unstable environment. We were devastated and took a 6-month break from foster care to recover and grieve.
In June of 2015, our foster home reopened, and 4-month-old baby Reuben joined our family on 2 hours' notice. He was placed as a short-term foster placement. It was a wild ride, having a 2-year-old and a 4- and 8-month-old, all while moving into a new house. Plus the added adventure of creating a relationship with Reuben's birth mom, who has now become a much-loved part of our family. But she kept us on our toes for a few years that were very hard. But that's another story.
In January of 2017, a family member contacted us about a pregnant mom they knew who was looking for adoptive parents for her baby. We met this birth mom and started the private adoption process. This mom ultimately chose to parent, but with our private adoption paperwork started and financially invested in, we decided to finish it, knowing that a match was unlikely or could take years.
In September of 2017, Reuben's adoption was finalized. We closed our foster home with CAS, and I said that I would need a decade to recover from our foster care experience.
The next month, we were matched with a potential birth mom through a private adoption agency. In January 2018, we were honored to be present at the birth of our daughter, Magnolia.
That June, we went tent camping with a 6-month-old, 2 3-year-olds, and a 5-year-old. and we got soaked when our tent started leaking after dark. We ended up spending the night at friends of ours in Chatham that are foster parents. The kids went to bed, but Adam and I stayed up late talking with our friends and exchanging our stories, laughing, crying, praying, and sharing God's goodness in the insanity of foster care.
The next morning, we woke up and drove back to our campsite, and I said to Jocelyn, "You know we're supposed to go back to foster care."
And I knew, but I didn't feel ready yet. That week, he sent me a link for a big, ugly van that was for sale. And I knew that if God had changed his heart, that he would change mine.
In July of 2018, less than a year after we'd closed our foster home, we made the call to reopen. In November, we bought our very own big, ugly van. And in June of 2019, our home reopened. 2 weeks later, 2-year-old Jackson joined our family in what was supposed to be a short-term stay.
A few months later, they asked us if we were willing to adopt him, and we were very excited that we are in the process of that now.
In December of 2019, a baby boy joined our family and was reunited with his family in February 2020. We're so happy for these types of success stories, which are ultimately the goal of foster care.
But still hard. Currently, we are open for children ages 0 to 18, so we just wait for a call and trust God with his plan. We know that we can't ever end up with the wrong child, even if they're different than we originally pictured. Most of our children have had prenatal drug and alcohol exposure, along with trauma that has caused permanent disabilities and brain damage. But each one is precious to us and to God. We know that every child and family that comes into our life comes for a time and a purpose so that we can show them the love of Christ. We still keep in contact with all of our former foster children and, of course, our current children's birth families. We have a lot of openness, which is both challenging and rewarding. And we're really all called to help those in need in our community. So through prayer, supporting foster families, or maybe God's laid on your heart becoming a foster parent. We encourage you to reach out to us or another foster family, and also to reach out to your local Children's Aid Society. Especially after this pandemic, the need will be greater than ever due to the isolation and the crises that are occurring in our community. So we hope that you'll act on whatever God's placed on your heart. Thanks.